of the Auditor General, as has been done. On the other side, the Auditor General is also enjoined by law to publish same immediately he submits the document to Parliament. So where do we stand? The Attorney General says that the way we interpret the two documents or the two laws must be towards a certain, towards the achievement of a certain objective. What would our objective be? What interpretation rules can we apply to this? One talks about submitting the document to Parliament, Parliament doing all it has to do, appointing a committee, etc., to look at it. Another saying that once it is submitted to Parliament, it must be published. Are the two mutually exclusive? In furtherance of accountability, transparency, etc., what should we be looking at? That will also engage our attention today. I'll take a short break, return, and then I'll introduce my guests. We'll get a discussion underway. But in the meantime, you can join the discussion via our WhatsApp line 020-444-7033, 020-444-7033, and we'll be happy to share your views with the rest of your world. Once again, my name is Selom Adonu. Welcome to The Big Issue. You're welcome back to The Big Issue. Welcome to insightful conversation and riveting analysis here on The Big Issue on 97.3 City FM. We are looking at the former Chief Justice's, action yesterday. She joined the guys picketing, the pensioner individual bondholders who have been picketing at the premises of the Finance Ministry from Monday, protesting their inclusion in the domestic debt exchange program. She joined them yesterday. Says she's a pensioner and she's a bondholder as well. And so she is not happy about the way the program is being carried out. She thinks that not a lot has been said to them. They've not been engaged enough. And the way it's being carried out is heartless, more or less. She thinks it is wicked, it is illegal, and it is so wrong, in her own words. She is thinking that government is sacrificing its aged for the program. But what sacrifices is government itself making? Government has announced some reshuffle of a sort. Analysts have said that it constitutes a kind of expansion of government. We will look at that. What measures is government putting in place to rein in its own expenditure? Mind you, government wants to spend more this year than it did spend last year. Should government seeking to spend more in a year that we are obviously in a crisis? Where is it going to get the money from? There's going to be a huge budget deficit. How are we going to finance that? These are the things that, analysts have said government should be looking at. To help us with the discussion this morning will be Godwin Eduji Tamaklo. He's a private legal practitioner and a member of the National Democratic Congress. Alfred Thompson is a former deputy managing director of the National Investment Bank and a member of the New Patriotic Party. Martin Kpebu is a private legal practitioner and is a convener of the Individual Bondholders Association of Ghana. Richard Ahiangba is Director of Communications of the NPP, and Franklin Kujo, President, Imani Africa. Gentlemen, you are welcome to the program.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you very much.
Yesterday, just when we thought the domestic debt exchange program was wrapping up and the pensioner individual bondholders were also wrapping up their picketing activities for the week at the Finance Ministry, and indeed that activity did not catch a lot of fire, as we say. Then the former Chief Justice, the Venerable Justice Sophia Kufu, arrived at the place, joined them to protest as well. She said that she thinks it is improper that people who have lived their lives, sacrificed for the country, contributed their quota to the development of the country, instead of being allowed to rest in the twilight of their years or life, are now being called upon to lend money to the state. And the manner it is being carried out she thought was not proper. And so our cameras caught up with her, and then let's hear some of the things she said about government and the program.
Who would have thought that we, the aged people of Ghana, will be driven to this? No, never. And so it's heartbreaking. I'm not as badly affected as quite a lot of people are, but even if I didn't have a single government bond, I would still have come, because older people in a country like this, where we don't have any special programs for the aged other than a pension, and now the pension is what is being threatened with all kinds of interferences. No, I could not really sit by. Yes, and so I felt I had to come. Yes, and I wish more people this age have come, or for that matter, even more young people. There are a number of young people who are here. They are grandchildren, if nothing at all. If we've got something, they too on their birthday, they'll get something valuable from us. But at the same time, we need to protect their future, so that they, when they become our age, will also will have sufficient confidence in their nation to invest in the nation. We've already invested a lot in this nation. We've invested our health, we've invested our youth, we've invested our time as pensioners. We worked faithfully, and that is why we earned pensions. And we cannot be treated with so much. And even the way it's been handled, for me, that's the other thing, because I have a legal background. I was once a judge. And if all the proposals, 1,001 flip-flops and changes and this way and backwards and forwards proposals from the government, if I don't understand, how can the ordinary person understand? But because I also understand, I know that all the proposals they've been making are not based on legality. It's a contract. At the end of the day, that's all that it is. And when I owe somebody, the most I can do is to try and see if they will agree to change the terms of our agreement. But you cannot shove it down our throats, and you cannot insist that because you think you cannot afford it, I should accept whatever you want me to do. No, they cannot do that. As administrators, they should rather be looking at parts of what they are in place to do, what they get paid to do, where they can cut on expenditure, they can cut on waste. They have not even come to prove to us where they've identified wastage and what is being done about it. You and I, you walk around and you see a lot of waste all along. And you don't want to do anything, and you want me to take a haircut. I don't know. With a little bit of hair left on my head, I want it on my head. I'm not going to take a haircut. And I'm not encouraging any Ghanaian to take a haircut. Patriotism is on various levels. And I think most of us have already chalked 99% of patriotism at this time in our lives. So don't let some young whippersnapper come and tell us to cut our expenditure and things like that. And it's not even as if most pensioners are living in luxury. All they've done is to shore up their monies in such a way that that added to their if they are earning pensions from their former places of employment, how they can have room to maneuver. Who said old age has to end up in poverty? It shouldn't.
The former Chief Justice also urged bondholders not to sign onto the Domestic Debt Exchange Program.
I'm over 70 now, and I'm no longer a government employee. My mouth has been ungagged and I'm talking and I'm saying what I feel. And it's important that the elderly in this nation should be respected. One, I find this wicked, I find it disrespectful, I find it unlawful, I find it totally wrong, period. Because you don't solve your problems by sacrificing your aged. That's the last thing you should do, especially when you don't have any services that are specially geared at the comfort and the relief of the aged. The Minister of Finance had better go back to the drawing board and come back with a better proposal, because otherwise nobody is going to. I'm encouraging people not to agree to sign up to anything. Yes, and if need be, we can all go to court. That's all. A contract is a contract and it has to be respected. And if you want to renegotiate it, come to the table, one, with humility, and come with a yesable proposition, not take it or leave it. Yes, it's all of us, it's our duty to shore up our economy. But we voted government into power to take care of our economy. So we should see where the due diligence is before you tell an aged person to lend you money. Please, they should come again. This doesn't start, it's a non-starter. So that's it. Well, I'm not speaking to the president. He has appointed somebody to take care of our money. And I remember when Ken Ofori-Atta was first appointed in 2017, I remember a statement he made that he sees his responsibility as Minister of Finance to protect the public purse. If you've not protected the public purse, why should it be us?
Also, that was former Chief Justice Sofa Akuffo joining demonstrators, people, old people who went to the Finance Ministry, premises of the Finance Ministry yesterday, Friday, to picket, to protest their inclusion in the domestic debt exchange program. They say that as old people who depend on the coupons from their bond investments to cater for themselves, they do not feel it's appropriate to be included in the program. They want to be exempted. But the Finance Minister has always maintained that it's voluntary. So now it's voluntary, and the Finance Minister has said you can self-exempt. Why are they still there? Because you can decide to join or not. After all, it's voluntary. We want to understand a bit of that. But I guess Eduji Tamaklo Godwin, private legal practitioner, member of the NDC, Alfred Thompson, former Deputy MD, National Investment Bank, MPP member, Franklin Kujo, President Mani Africa, Martin Pebu, private legal practitioner, Richard Ahiagba, Director of Communications of the MPP. Godwin, let me start off with you. You know the former Chief Justice quite well. I'm sure you've practiced, obviously, many times before her. Was it a big deal that she joined the picketers or the demonstrators yesterday and said some of the things she said?
Okay, so good morning to our cherished listeners and viewers, and my co-panelists and my colleague, my learned friend, Shalom. So we find ourselves in a situation where anybody who knows her ladyship, the former CJ, Sophia Akuffo, she had come on board in terms of our national conversation with a certain level of conviction. And that is what she is known for. She will tell you her peace of mind, regardless of whoever you are. It's instructive to note, and this for the record, remember that she was appointed by the Jerry Rawlings administration
to the Supreme Court.
To the Supreme Court. She stayed on at a point almost the longest serving Supreme Court judge.
Yes.
Then subsequently, Mr. Akufo-Addo appointed her, went through the normal constitutional requirements and became the Chief Justice of this Republic. So the greater part of the Akufo-Addo presidency, in fact the first term, she was the Chief Justice of the Republic. It's also instructive to note that beyond everything, if you read her judgments over the period, she had always come on board. And look, she's the type who doesn't care dissenting.
Yes.
So if you look at the famous decision, the parliamentary election decision, Zakaria Nyimakan, the Wolensi parliamentary decision. Whereas the majority of the judges said, when it comes to parliamentary election petition hearing, the Supreme Court has no jurisdiction relative to the petition itself, and that all kinds of appeal terminates at the Court of Appeal. She dissented. She doesn't care being a lone ranger. So I'm just putting these matters in perspective so people will know the kind of person. And I recall the last matter I appeared before her was a matter where two NDC MPs, in the person of Honorable Kodo, the whole Central MP, and Richard Koshiga, felt that the constitutional threshold, that is the amount of money that is put into the District Assembly Common Fund, when Ken Ofori-Atta became the finance minister, he tried to change that 5% of your revenue should go into the District Assembly Common Fund. Ken Ofori-Atta decided, for whatever it's worth, to take away petroleum revenue from the total revenue. So by so doing, the 5% becomes smaller into the District Assembly Common Fund. So myself and my senior partner, Dr. Ayene, representing the two NDC MPs, went to the Supreme Court to challenge the constitutionality of that. And she agreed. Obviously, she presided. And the Supreme Court agreed and ordered Ken to do the re-engineering well to include petroleum revenue, because it's all part of Ghana's total revenue. Yes. And by so doing, the amount of money that had to go into the District Assembly Common Fund now increased. Even that one, I recall, when the decision came, getting Ken Ofori-Atta to even comply with the Supreme Court decision became a problem. I remember vividly writing letters from our law firm, threatening him that we will cite him for contempt. And not only that, you know that the Constitution itself says that if you fail to comply with the orders of the Supreme, even if you are president, it constitutes grounds for your removal. Yeah. So when we put all those, I think the subsequent budget, he started including the petroleum revenue into the bulk. But by which time, the economy had already fallen so low that there was not much to give to the District Assembly Common Fund. I am putting in perspective the kind of person who yesterday decided to picket or to join pensioners of this republic to send a very clear message to government of Ghana that, listen, if you want people to help you out of a mess that you have created, the way is not to put gun on their head. What Ken Ofori-Atta is doing with this domestic debt exchange program is take it or leave it. It is essentially to put gun on the heads of people. Look, what has happened so far with this the domestic debt exchange program? We have been told, for instance, that the banks have agreed, right? The banks have agreed because these are banks that are under regulation. Yeah. If you're under regulation, under a very vindictive government like the Akufo-Addo administration, I don't know about the vindictiveness. Yes. After that, you can. I mean, you have the right to issue your disclaimer. But the point ought to be made clear that people have seen how banks that were perceived, quote unquote, to have wronged in the past, how they were treated, right? We have seen how a bank like Heritage Bank, with all the issues, in the sense that it was very solvent, how its license was revoked over very flimsy excuses. So these bank managers, aware of how things have happened in the past, obviously surrounded. And like I told you, Ken is treating this domestic exchange program like an armed robber who had come to your house with a gun pointed right on your head, and at the same time he is telling you that you have a choice. How ironic that is. what is the conversation about? If you look at the exposures to this whole the domestic debt, the banks constitute about 33% in terms of exposure. If you look at pensioners, right? How many of them? Very small number.
As in pensioner bondholders.
Yes, pension bond, like
yes,
the
pensioners
people
who hold bonds.
who hold bonds. Then workers whose pensions have also been used, that category is also there. But in all this conversation, our friends in the NPP are also looking at the politics, the electoral advantage relative to this domestic debt exchange program. And when I say this, what I'm trying to say is this. If you look at workers today in Ghana, that's over 600,000. With all their dependents.
Government workers.
I mean government workers. If you put all their dependents and others together, we are dealing with no less than 3 million people. If you touch the savings of over 3 million people, you can't survive in any election. Now, if you look at the number of pensioners who are bondholders, the number compared to active workers is minimal. So government sees that it is easier to negotiate or exempt pension funds that are within government, what shall I say? Because you see, if not, look at the amount of money involved, about 15 billion relative to pension funds. When it comes to pensioners holding bonds, it's about 2 billion. So if there is anything that you can exempt, which one would you exempt? Is it not the two? Is it not the two? Because if it's about freeing the fiscal space, then it is easier exempting the 2 than the 15. But the only reason why he is interested in the 2 and not the 15 billion is that the electoral consequence. It's the electoral consequence. And the evidence is there. Because if you recall in 2020, when it became obvious that the banking sector cleanup and persons whose monies have been kept in the various banks amounted to almost 4-point-something million, if I recall.
Billion.
No, million. The number of customers.
As an individual.
The total number of people. Okay.
Right? So what did government do? Even when government did not budget for the payments, the last minute they had to find money to do it, to pay them because of the electoral consequences of keeping those people unattended to. So it's important that in situating this conversation, we look at the game plan of Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta.
But Ken Ofori-Atta is a politician. He has a political party. Shouldn't he be considering also the electoral consequence of his actions? They are politicians.
No, that is why I'm saying that the electoral consequence, at this point, Ken Ofori-Atta, in terms of the options available to him, are limited. So either way, he would have to restructure our debt. Yes. Now, the multilateral and bilateral debts, it's difficult to manage it in this manner. Now, when he looks at the domestic debt, it's over 182 billion, right? So it is this amount that he is tweaking. So he looks at you, the banks. He said, okay, come for this ABCD arrangement. Regulatory, they are under regulation. So you have to play ball. Then he looks at the other layer, pension funds. He looks at it, these are persons. As for banks, they are what you call artificial persons, right? Quote unquote, they don't vote. Let me put it in that way. They don't vote. So you can easily squeeze them into submission. But the next available one, which had to do with pension funds, it directly affects over 600,000 workers of this country. Now, if 600,000 workers of this country rises up against you, you can't survive electorally. So quickly, he exempted them upon their threats. The next available category is the pensioners holding bonds. What is the number? Even the amount involved is just about 2 billion Ghana cedis. So it is even easier to exempt them. Because if it's about creating fiscal space, exempting 2 billion is easy than exempting 16 billion. Because the more you get the 16 billion committed, It frees you over 16 billion Ghana
The 16
cedis.
billion has challenges. It will lead to social unrest, industrial actions. The system will become ungovernable.
No,
you
so
can't do
that is
that.
why I'm saying that. So they are looking at the political consequence.
But is it not fair to do so?
It's not.
Not to look at the political consequences, the social consequences.
No, it's not social.
The social
it's
consequences.
electoral benefit.
Yes, but the social consequences will impact the electoral consequences. The fortunes electorally
Yeah, so that
will
is
be
why I'm saying
impacted
that.
by the social.
So you see,
issues.
it's like I'm sure you've had the benefit of doing game theory. You understand? So you are looking at possibly a Nash equilibrium, where the best question you are asking yourself is that under the circumstance, who, if I sacrifice, will not hurt me the most electorally? And under the circumstance, he sees that conveniently, if I hurt pensioners holding bonds, I'll be better off in the overall equation. And that has been the game plan. Look, if you listen to former CJ, and from all the conversation, she makes the point. He said, how in God's name did we accrue the debts? The answer is simple. Ken Ofori-Atta became a finance minister with one thing in mind: borrow to manage the depreciation of the city. And so consistently from 2017, Selom, you will notice that consistently, 2017, he did a 2.25 Franklin Templeton bond.
Yeah.
2018, he did another 2 billion euro bond. Now he went into the euro bond market. 2019, he did another 2 billion euro bond. Even when COVID came, he did another 2 billion combined with the IMF Rapid Credit Facility. That notwithstanding, even in 2021, he did another one. The only problem started in 2022. Selom, if you recall, when the credit rating agencies downgraded us, it became difficult for us to move into the international financial market. What options were available to Ken in order to provide a certain stability for the city? Because effectively what he was doing with the city was to give the city performance enhancing drugs. So he was giving the city steroids. So every year he needs to get $2 billion to show up our international reserve, to provide an artificial sense of stability. That is what his economics was doing. The combined effort of Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia and Ken Ofori-Atta yielded that particular effort. So their only hope was e-levy, and e-levy failed in a very spectacular manner. What options were they?
They blame your side for bad-mouthing the e-levy and not making it work.
So what about Ghanaians who rejected it eventually when they got a pass?
No, they said their minds had been poisoned already
By
your people.
the least they can do is to insult the intelligence of Ghanaians. Look, you have had the benefit of studying tax. In my first degree, I did public finance. And taxation was one of the courses. In fact, the then professor, now Dr. Kwamba Nwaku, my lecturer in public finance. There's one thing that he kept saying, that you cannot pass a tax that touches people's savings. Because in the developed economies, what they've done is to develop on the basis of savings. So if you are going to have a tax that essentially touches people's savings, because the money is on your wallet, it's actually a saving for you. So if you have a tax that is going to touch people's savings, they are going to rebel, no matter who they are. So people naturally reacted in the manner in which they did. And that is why you notice that the e-levy failed. So what options were they left now? To now go to the Bank of Ghana for overdrafts. Look, Selom, you and I are lawyers. You know that the amended Bank of Ghana Act clearly forbids the governor of the Bank of Ghana and the persons associated with the Bank of Ghana from giving overdraft or any other instrument to government beyond 5% of the previous year's total revenue. As we speak today, first in 2020, Governor Addison gave the Akufo-Addo administration 10 billion Ghana cedis by way of what? Borrowing.
And is it not because of the COVID difficulties we had? So,
Which COVID difficulties?
Because we needed more money.
First of all, what were the COVID expenses? Free water, free electricity, Correct.
But government lost money because
No, hold
government
on.
institutions were not working.
Hold on. These monies were supposed to have been given to government. Correct. You do know that government immediately went to Parliament and got Parliament to relax the stabilization fund that allowed government to pull 1.2 billion Ghana cedis. That's 200 million from the stabilization fund. That alone gave this government 1.2 billion. It is that 1.2 billion that they use for free water, free electricity, free food. They use all the insurance for public, health workers. Then 600 million of that was supposed to be used for business support services. So in terms of government actual expenditure, but when the COVID report came, the special audit, it became clear that what government actually used the COVID-19 funds for was budgetary support, giving monies to district assemblies. How is that COVID-19 associated expenditure?
So
these are constitutional and statutory expenses.
Very well.
So the point ought to be made, and I need to make this point clearly.
Quickly, yes.
When the former CJ asked the question, obviously rhetorical, how did we get here? It was the unbridled borrowing associated with the economic management team chaired by Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia with Ken Ofori-Atta in there. I have always maintained, and this position I've made it very clear, that if Ken Ofori-Atta has taken a bit of self-dealing out of his management of the Ghanaian economy, will not be where we are. You will recall that the IMF, the World Bank director, Malpass, had cause to say that government of Ghana had the opportunity to sign on to the debt suspension initiative, correct? The DSSI,
yes.
The debt service suspension initiative. Do you know why government of Ghana could not have signed on to that program? Which would have freed us the opportunity of using so much to service our debt.
But at the time, we should have been on the IMF. Shouldn't we have been on the IMF to qualify for the DSSI?
No. Because it was, you see, remember that consistently from 2017, we've been doing 30 billion Ghana cedis in terms of interest payment and amortization. By 2021, we're doing about 45 billion Ghana cedis in interest payment and amortization. If you have this kind of exposure, I recall when we were in power, the maximum debt service, interest payment and amortization that we ever did was 11 billion Ghana cedis in 2016. That was the highest. From 2017 consistently to date, you have not done less than 33 billion. So there's no fiscal space for you to do the other things. In any case, Selom, you recall the time H.E. John Dramani Mahama kept saying that, you know what, the time has come for you to go to the IMF for a program. You saw the arrogance, the posturing of government officials. In fact, there was a deputy minister who even said that, if we go to the IMF, they will send small boys. It is that arrogance. Do you know that if we are signed on to the IMF program a year earlier, we will not be in the situation we find ourselves? In any case, Selom, so that maybe I can just bring my thought on this matter. In any case, Selom, at the time when we said we were signing on to the IMF program, right, this government had the biggest financial envelope ever since 1992. Look, from 2009 to 2016, under Atamil's John Mahama Emisata, the envelope of financial resources that we had was 248 billion Ghana cedis. Today, in the space of 6 years, the Akufo-Addo Bawumia administration, they have gotten in excess of 560 billion. All this money, with all this money, you have still run the economy aground. Why? If you go to Legon Hall, the motto in front of Legon Hall is what? To whom much is given, much is what? Expected.
Very well. But of course, I know that the responses will be that they have introduced more programs which are
Can-
social
is
interventions.
it-
But I
can you just give me
no,
10
wait, you've been speaking. No, you've been speaking for a while.
Very well.
Let me bring in Alfred.
Okay.
Alfred, the former CJ joining the demonstration yesterday surely should get you thinking. And she said a number of things in a way that very influential people who are not politicians don't say. Asking rhetorical questions, saying, amongst other things, that it appears that we are sacrificing the aged to solve a problem they essentially were not part of, etc. That should really get you thinking.
Good morning once again, Salom. Good morning, Eduji. And good morning to those who are watching us and listening and watching through Facebook and other social media. It's quite interesting that the CJ has shown us that she hasn't got any political coloration around her. And it takes me back to the time when she was elected and the NDC had this paint all over her that she's one MPP, she's a relative of the president, and that she was a biased person and she wasn't going to do the work of the CJ but going to work on behalf of the government and people of the MPP. Today, the same Eduji is sitting here eulogizing her that she is strict, she dissents from certain comments and things. So you ask yourself, when she was elected the CJ in this country, were they not part of this country or they were just trying to be mischievous? It's for the Ghanaians to answer.
But I mean, to be fair,
Personally,
when she went through the parliamentary vetting. I don't recall any
There was
difficulty.
no
She didn't
dissent.
have any difficulty.
she didn't
going
have.
through-
I mean, when you go through parliamentary
But if
vetting,
she-
you didn't have.
one-sided-
But if she gives a judgment,
When
we have a right as a people.
when
to
she
critique
I was saying that
judgment.
when she was nominated as CJ, didn't you hear all the comments that came out from NDC?
But she went through parliament. We didn't-
It doesn't matter. Before
No, but people
before
will
she
say,
went
people,
through parliament,
Alfred, if you are
what
appointed
were
into a
the
position-
comments?
If you are appointed into a position right now,
Yeah.
people will say things, including things
I'm
you don't even know about
saying,
yourself.
I'm
People will
saying
say
that
yes.
things that were said about
But
her
were they
with
official
all the
comments from the NDC? As
No,
you
NDC made so many comments, wrote so many things. Go to
Official.
social media,
Oh,
Google
please
right now. You
stop.
see the
because
things.
what I know is,
You see
know,
the
at the
things
time
that
she
they
was
wrote.
appointed CJ, she was the longest serving, justice. of
I'm
the
not
Supreme
saying
Court.
that she didn't do well.
and she had
I'm not
distinguished
saying-
herself.
I'm not saying that,
If it's about
Eduji,
politics,
Eduji,
Yeah, so energy. So
when
yeah,
you were
energy.
speaking, I was very
Alfred.
quiet
So
about
yes,
it.
let's talk. Yes.
What I'm stating.
focus on the issue.
No, he's staying focused.
Why
actually.
are you trying to?
Don't be
do what
derailed.
I have
Don't be
I'll be derailed. That's
Yes,
all. I'll
so
come
go
on.
ahead.
I've written what I have to.
Go
and
ahead.
I'll write. I'll deal with it
Yeah,
on the
go
right
ahead.
time.
People can
Energy. You're disrupting.
I'm stating here on record that when her name was mentioned, the comments that came with it from the opposition side was so ill that one would have thought that she sitting here would have shown some political coloration that she's MPP. But her comments alone yesterday shows that she's an independent-minded Ghanaian.
It's not because she's been affected personally.
Whether she's affected personally or not, I thought the president told us that we shouldn't be spectators, but we should be citizens.
Okay.
Isn't she a citizen?
She is.
Can she talk?
Just has been on
Whether
guard
she's
now.
she's saying she's on guard because when as a CJ, as a
can't just
government
talk. You
official,
can't
you can't
just-
just say anything. You can't go and pick it. As a government official, you cannot go and pick it in front of what do you call it?
Another government
Another government
agency.
agency that your money is lost and things. So at the moment, once she is no longer officially a government official, she has the right as a citizen.
Even though in some other capacities, she's a government appointee on the University of Ghana Council.
Oh, that is that.
No, she's even a
appointees-
member of the Council of State.
No, I think
she's
CJ
not.
Wood is there.
She's not.
CJ
It's
Wood is
Only
there.
one.
Where?
Yes,
Okay,
so
you
CJ
want
Wood
that
is there.
vote.
Yes,
Yes, so Wood is there, but that is I
Yes,
mean,
yes.
it's a normal,
Yeah, just
natural
flow,
thing.
yeah.
Coming to the issues, in fact, if we are going to talk about her, I've had an issue with her before in court when I was at NIB, and we had this famous case, financial misappropriations that happened before, and it was, we are being sued for millions of dollars.
The Dominion-
the Dominion case. That
Standard
went-
Offshore.
Yeah, that went to her, and that fateful morning, Chachu Chishkata was our lawyer.
Was your lawyer,
In
yeah.
fact, he did the first part. He took his fee, and he said that once it's going back to court, he has to do it, and he was going to charge the same fee, which we told him that we can't afford. So we are going for another lawyer, which he said he wasn't going to accept. So that morning we told him that
And that
we
caused
can't.
some difficulty in the courts, I recall.
So we got there, and I was the person who was representing the bank that day. Unfortunately, my boss couldn't come. So when we got there, we told him that, listen, we can't pay the money you're asking for. I don't want to mention the money, but we can't pay that amount you are asking for. It's beyond us. It's like crippling the bank. Then why don't we give that money to Dominion and then be free and come out of this? And he wasn't, accepting what we are saying. So I was told that, okay, when we get there and things start, just stand up and just tell the court that, listen, this is not your lawyer and you don't approve of him leading your case for you. So you have taken another lawyer and everything. I did that, and then Chief Justice said I should sit down. She said me. Then they gave me another sign that, listen, just be pushing, So I stood up again and told her that I still don't approve of Chachu Chikata leading our case for us. Then it got to her and said, young man, I don't approve of this behavior in my court. If you do, I'll walk you out.
She's no nonsense.
And I just decided that I'm not going to talk again. I don't want an issue to happen to me. So that's how she behaves. She puts everything aside and she just deals with you as it should. Yes, she's been affected one way or another by this. Yes, she's a pensioner. Yes, she has her obligations in which to meet all these things. And so I don't see anything wrong with her going out to talk about things that are worrying her. And above all, she's a citizen of Ghana. She hasn't got anywhere else to go and fight her case, but in front of to picket with the other members of society, the pensioners, and also to tell the finance minister that, listen, if the West comes to the West, we'll all go to court. I have stated over and over again that this is a contract between the government of Ghana and the people of Ghana, the bondholders. I have stated over and over again too that it cannot be a one-sided decision that once you've signed a contract, you would one side can decide that, listen, I'm abrogating it or I'm changing the rules of the game to suit me. It can't happen. Minister himself has come out to state over and over again that this is voluntary. It is not compulsory. However, he's pleading, and he's always used the word that he's pleading with people to sign on so that we all don't fall into the mess that is ahead of us. There are so many things that Eduji brought up, and I'll plead with him that where we've gotten to, and in this case, we should do it devoid of politics. The moment you bring some word or two which sounds like it's being political coloration, you kill the spirit of how we want to go as a nation. Why am I saying this? He used the word vindictive Akufo-Addo government, which I think wasn't fair. And it wasn't right because we have a subject we are dealing with. Let us deal with the subject. Your other side, when you get on your political platform, you can do that. But we have a nation in which, at the moment, you have economic crisis, which we need to control or we need to solve.
But the crisis was caused by politics.
Eduji.
Okay.
I wrote all your
I just wanted
I knew everything you were saying, but I wrote it down.
Yes, go ahead, just go ahead. Yes.
So, all these things that you were saying, and electoral consequences, and that when he does, listen, even if you touch one person, you haven't touched only one person, you've touched a family. You've touched maybe a whole city or a whole kingdom. You've touched a whole tribesman or something.
But that effect multiplies. If
And
you
that's
touch
what I'm
more
saying,
people.
that if you touch one person, you are touching a whole lot of people.
So if you touch 10
So
people, you are
minister
touching a
knows,
whole lot.
Yes. So minister knows what is going in. Pleading that, listen, we've all come to this stage, whether it was caused by A or caused by B. At the moment, what we are in, we need to solve it and come out of it. I need your support and everything. He talked about the banks had to play ball and everything. The banks could have decided that, listen, I'm not going to do this. And the minister could not do anything about it. Now, they've opened the SFS this thing for them that, listen, if the worst case scenario comes in for the banks and also the insurance houses and everything, if the worst case comes in, you can fall on the SFS.
That is 15 billion.
Yes, but at least I mean it's revolving or it goes on every year. And
You say every year because we've not been told that. The
I believe
pictures
that-
painted as if it's 15 billion. And
I
it's there,
believe
that's
that
all.
it's not going to be 15. If it's 10 years, 15 billion, I don't believe so.
Because that's the impression we get.
I don't believe
And we are
so.
not even sure
I-
about the funding of that FSF.
I would not confirm whether it's every year or so,
The
but I
GATA
know that at the
reviews.
moment,
the Financial
FSF.
Stability Fund.
But it should be channeled
To
through
the
that.
Yes.
So at the
And
end
that's
of
what Mahama Rega and co are complaining about. But that's a different issue.
No, I
For
mean,
another-
conversations are still ongoing. It's not a dead end issue. So we cannot say that, listen, upon all this, what we need to do as a government is get about 80% sign on. At the moment, you are hovering around 50%. You need to, whether even some people are signing on or not, you need to at least get everyone's buy-in into this. It's not a matter of, okay, the three of us are bondholders. You have signed on and the rest, I don't need them, so I don't need to. But you need to let everybody come or have the spirit of the buy-in that, listen, where we are, it's a choice. The government can decide, okay, let's look for money internally, let's pay them off. And then what happens? Inflation skyrockets, the economy goes bad, everything goes haywire. The money that has been given to you becomes null and void, or it becomes nothing at the end of the day. Or let us correct the mistakes that have happened. Let us see how we can put things together. So even when you are giving your money, at least it becomes substantial. Because when you look at the fair market value as against what people are getting, you ask yourself, am I better off leaving it for a year or two or so? But you see, we keep on shifting and
But
managing
the
situations.
difficulty they have raised is they are pensioners, and they were.
No, I agree with that. I'll get to that.
Okay.
I agree with that totally.
Okay.
That they are pensioners, and that is why I keep on saying that it's a negotiation situation. And you realize that when we started, it was a zero coupon rate. Now they've looked at the 5%, they've looked at the 10%, they've looked at other things that they are putting in. It can still be negotiated. It's still ongoing. It's rather unfortunate that it's about the 5th time they've postponed the date.
Time is running.
As at yesterday,
Next time we have a match.
as
date.
at
Deadline.
yesterday, I didn't know whether they are postponing it again.
So I think there's a
because I
14th
think-
or 16th day to finalize everything.
Yes, I think because the Chief Justice issue came in, it's overtaking the
Yes.
information that we should have received yesterday. He talked about the borrowings of the government and everything. You see, Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta cannot decide that, listen, I'm going to borrow, and that is it. He goes to borrow and uses the money. There is a parliamentary approval for every borrowing that goes on. Parliament, there's finance committee, I believe, has to sit down and analyze the borrowings that are coming in, how we are paying, how everything is going to go, and everything. So there's an approval process. That's what I'm saying. He cannot on his own decide that, listen, I'm going to borrow. So if he's going
But there's
to...
a parliamentary process. That's very true.
Yeah.
And the decision of Parliament, notwithstanding
It's
the
final.
dissent voice, is seen as the decision of Parliament. But of course, we know some of the issues that the minority, at the time raised. Okay?
Minority,
and because they did not have the numbers, we didn't really hear a lot of them.
Minority raised those decisions after. They didn't raise during the
No.
approval process.
Sometimes
During the approval
they
process,
raise red flags.
Have they worked out on in Parliament for
But there are
approvals?
many reasons why. There are many ways they can protest. They can
Okay.
raise the issues. They can work hard. They can do
Have
other
they
things.
worked out on approval of any loan before? Ask yourself that
So
question.
the work out for you should be it.
It should be on record.
No, what I mean is,
mean,
once
it
they don't
should
work
be-
out, despite their disapproval.
I mean, if I say I disapprove and I go and approve the loan, I mean at the voting stage, what is the use? What is the use of that? Let it go on record. Let us take the Hansard and see that weren't all those loans approved, and by a majority decision by parliamentarians. I didn't see that they said that 20% or 30%.
Often voice vote, and the
Yes.
majority
Takes
was
it.
overwhelming.
Yes.
So
It's
the
overwhelming.
majority
So
voice would
at the end of it, they approved all the loans.
dwarf every other voice.
So you see, so you can't sit down after that and blame one person. And let's be realistic. Listen, the loan wasn't once, it wasn't twice. The bonds were not once or twice. Every year, consistently, it's been ongoing. So if you have not been able to account for the previous one and tell us how you are managing to pay, why do we allow you to go again? So let us not behave as if, oh, yes, one person decided to bring the country to this stage. Let us not behave that way. Let us take responsibility for everything that we are doing. Then you come to what do you call it? He was bringing in this particular case, he was bringing the economic management team in. Economic management team does not approve loans. Economic management team just only offers advice to cabinet and to the president. They can decide to take it or not to take it. So if they've taken or they've brought up a solution, and the cabinet decides that, okay, this is the way we are going, you cannot blame economic management team that what are they sitting there for, or their decision.
But the economic management team, there's a vice president
who chairs it.
Yes, and that's huge. The vice president
he chairs
is huge.
it.
And the finance minister.
Let me tell you something.
Do you know why the
buck starts with the president. Oh, please. The Simpapeni is someone who is on the chair and is not treated as the person in the chair.
So is that the kind of
the chair is the end. The chair of any government ends with the president. You see, don't confuse issues and take your write your thing. Write your thing. Write your thing and let me explain.
So the point you're making is that even though Dr. Bawumia is vice president, forget about economic management, is vice president, and he was sold to us as an economic whiz kid, the man to solve the economic difficulties that John Mahama had put Ghana into.
He can only proffer solutions to the president.
Yes,
and the president can decide.
But the president said he was going
to
make him run the economy. The president said that on many occasions.
But it ends still with
and to even, I mean,
don't confuse it.
No, but we know why he came.
Yes,
and he was sold to us a certain way. We believed it.
Let me ask you something.
We voted
you
for
sitting
him,
in,
or we voted for the team to come.
We know you are very good on this show, and they decide that they are changing you. What can you do about it?
No, but Bawumia cannot be changed like just anybody.
No, I'm saying that they decide that. I mean, the management or the head of this place decides that he's changing you and bringing.
No, there's nothing I can do. But in this case, we are not changing. We are not changing. Just listen. No, don't mind him. Listen.
Now let me explain what I'm telling you.
Bawumia cannot be changed as vice president.
And he cannot be changed.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is that the president can decide to take his advice or not to take his advice. True or false?
But he said so.
True
Just
or false?
that.
True or false? Don't let's change.
No, it can happen.
It's not that it can happen.
But the president told us.
Listen, I'm coming. The president has the honors to take his advice or not to take it. Bawumia has preferred his advice to the president,
and the president is not taking it.
The president, I'm telling you that he can only give advice. He cannot say that I am going to do this.
And so you are telling us on authority that Bawumia preferred his
I'm telling you on authority that the economic management team would advise the president and cabinet.
You are telling us
and
that
it is upon cabinet to take the decision or not to take the decision.
Yes,
go and read. Go and read the minutes of cabinet and see whether they take it or not.
If only I had access to that. But you know what? Wait. You know what? No, wait. Listen to me. Don't mind Eduji.
No, why is he so jittery?
Don't mind Eduji. Listen to me. I'm saying that. Who are the members of the economic management team?
It's made up of so many.
A lot of them.
Yes.
About 80 or 90,
even the senior advisor,
about 80 to 90% of those people on the committee,
trade minister is, the finance minister
are members of cabinet.
The finance
so
minister
if they with economic know-how, because they are very good at it, that's why they put them there.
Okay.
And virtually the same people who sit in cabinet, they can influence the rest of their colleagues.
I'll give you another lead.
To go the way of their advice.
I'll give you another lead. Go and check the meetings of the economic management team and see those who were present.
Very well. So this is the big issue. We are coming to you live from 97.3 City FM. The discussion. So we're looking at the former Chief Justice's presence at the Finance Ministry yesterday and getting into the DDEP matters with it. We will eventually look at some of the sacrifices that the government is asking Ghanaians to make, juxtaposing it against the sacrifices the government itself is making. Over-bloated government, high expenditure, etc. Helping us do the discussion, Eduji Tamaklo of the NDC private legal practitioner, Alfred Thompson, former Deputy MD, National Investment Bank, MPP, Martin Pebu, private legal practitioner, who is here to have a bite, Richard Ahiangba, Director of Communication, MPP, also here to have a bite, and Franklin Kujo, President of Money Africa, also here to have a bite. We'll take a short break, return, and then delve into the matter some more. Yeah, welcome back to the big issue. Very big welcome to our TV viewers as well. We are on City TV, obviously, and on 97.3 City FM. We are looking at yesterday's picketing at the Finance Ministry. The former CJ, Sufaya Kufu, was there, which gave some impetus to the struggle. And she said quite a number of things. She doesn't understand why old people, pensioners who have saved or bought government bonds, who have contributed their quota to the development of the country, must be treated the way she thinks they are being treated. She thinks the way they are handling the matter is illegal, it is wicked, and it's very wrong. These are her words. And she says that it's not fair that government is asking them to make sacrifices, very old people, to make sacrifices to pay for the quote-unquote the sins of the government in terms of, borrowing and the debt situation we have hanging around our necks. But what is the government itself sacrificing? What is the government itself doing in furtherance of its call on the people to burden share? Recently, there was a mini reshuffle of a sort. The net effect of that is that there has been an expansion in government. Government also wants to spend more this year than it spent last year. Should we be spending more on what exactly this year that we acknowledge we are in a crisis, we are in a debt exchange program, we are chasing the IMF for a program, or we should actually be cutting the purse and being a bit more frugal in our expenditure? How do we even finance the gaping deficit that may appear in the end? That will further exacerbate the problem. Should pensioner bondholders be the people to be called upon to assist in this matter? That is the matter engaging our minds. And we've heard from Eduji Tamaklo, private legal practitioner and member of the NDC, Alfred Thompson, former deputy MD, National Investment Bank, and also MPP. Richard Ahiagba is director of communication of the MPP. He's on. Franklin Kujo, our usual suspect, Imani Africa president, is also on. And then Martin Pebu, private legal practitioner, convener, Individual Bondholders Association of Ghana, is also on. Richard, I come to you. I have read from social media and listened to some commentary from some of your people in respect of the former CJ's conduct or action yesterday. Many of them have started, if you like, attacking her, asking her certain questions which may not be relevant to the discussion at all. Is this the way to go, or we should actually commend her for coming out to speak her mind?
Well, Shalom, thank you. And I'm sure you can hear me.
Very well. I can hear you so well.
Greetings. Thank you. Warm greetings to my co-panelists and your good self, your viewers, and perhaps listeners on radio. On the matter of the former Chief Justice, I have very little to say, but rather I have quite a bit to say about what Eduji said. So on the CJ, I think that is a democratic right. She felt that she belongs to a category of people whose bonds are called upon voluntarily to participate in an exchange. It's not under duress. Is for people to elect to participate or not to participate. And I don't know if she elected to participate and then come to demonstrate against what she has elected to do. That's confusing for me. The key word for all of us is the basis for participation. Let not that be lost on any of us. That is voluntary. The government is not coercing. The government is appealing to our sense of citizenship, to our sense of patriotism, in realizing the difficulty the country is in, to come in and support and participate. And so I'm confused what exactly she was protesting, because there are people who willingly want to participate. They are participating, and they didn't come out to protest. And so if she has the choice not to participate, and she chose not to participate, the basis for her demonstration is not clear. She's a very seasoned lawyer, risen to the very heights. So I'm not in any position to discuss or try to impugn that she didn't process the logic of it. She processed it, but I don't understand why you would have the freedom to choose something. And you are free to choose. Then you are demonstrating something you have freedom.
But
to choose or
yes,
not to.
if I could just inquire, if I could just inquire further, let me just inquire further. You know, the gap. Of course, we saw from the beginning what happened to the pension funds. They also had the option to voluntarily participate or not, but upon threats of industrial action, social action, etc., the finance minister, government came out to say they were exempted. It was categorical. They were exempted. Why can't government or the finance minister do same to this small group of people? Say, okay, pensioner bondholders, you are not part of it. We have taken you out. You don't even give them the option to be part of it voluntarily or not. Of course, I've had technical discussions that being exempted by the issuer is different from the person himself exempt or self-exempting. The two are different, and it's technical. Dr. Duan Anyenfi yesterday was trying to explain to the public what that means. But Dr. Duan Anyenfi, who for many years led the Security and Exchange Commission, knows exactly what it is. And he said that he is a market person. Kenneth Furata is also a market person. So they both understand what it is. So I'm not sure it will be fair on them to speak as if they do not know what they are doing. Exactly. He knows what he's doing, and he knows why he's leading his people that route.
Salom, you are trying to rationalize for the CJ and people in a category. I am not debating them. I'm only examining the basis for the demonstration.
Yes, and I'm also pointing out that the basis must be contextualized. We must contextualize the basis. There is self-exemption and there's an issuer exempting you. They are not the same.
That's okay, but Salom, allow me to make my point.
Make
the
point.
People who are listening, they will be able to
obviously
process it
yes.
So let's allow the conversation. Look, so I'm saying that it's a voluntary participation. You chose to participate or not to participate, but to demonstrate, I don't see the rationale. I don't see the logic, because you are free not to. So something you are free not to participate in, what are you protesting? You don't have a basis, in my view. Now, the rationalization also about why didn't the finance minister choose to exclude this small group of people or that small group of people? The constraint within which the finance minister is working. He is not just sitting there trying to be mean to people. It's not the debt restructure. It's not an exercise to punish people. It's an exercise to solve a national difficulty. I think people need to contextualize that way. And that is the primary context in which this conversation must ensue. Mm-hmm. If you miss that context, you will get to think that he is just there trying to be mean and try to punish people. No. The entire economy is at risk. It's at stake to where if we don't get some effort, underway to try to formalize the domestic debt situation, to create the necessary fiscal room, it would create a situation where we may risk the entire economy. So he's working under constraint. And so that constraint has larger implications for the economy. And so I think that to be fair to the finance minister, we need to appreciate that. And that for me is really what we need to address our minds to. And if we do, it would actually soften the positions that we're taking.
Super. But can you quickly respond to my question about how some people, I don't know whether they are affiliates of your party or etc., are trying to attack the person of this former CJ, asking her certain questions, etc. I've seen a lot of that on social media. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but is it the right thing to do? If not, what will you tell these people? Will you tell them to pipe down, or you will leave them to go the route they are going?
Well, I mean, that's why they call it democracy. People, they will express their views one way or the other, but I will not attack them. I will just try to understand the logic, which presently I do not understand. Why she would choose to demonstrate when she had the rights, the freedom to choose to participate or not to participate. And so which other group of people who are attacking her, I will not subscribe to that, but they may have their democratic right to do so. I'm saying that my brother Edwiji said a lot of things, and I haven't seen him in a while. I say a very good morning to you, Edwiji. But he's gone to town and then has strategically prevented my colleague Thompson from speaking. There is a fundamental difference between the NDC and the MPP. That one, we need to get that. There's a fundamental difference. And I will use one or two examples to explain that, and that will bring to light what Ebiji was trying to do. You see, they say, as a man thinketh, so is he. The way the NDC thinks, that's how they govern. They scheme. One, the first thing is that the NDC is a scheming political party that targets public policy for votes. The MPP is the opposite. MPP, we invest in public policy for the purposes of leveraging those public policy, the outcome of those public policy, to legitimize our demand for power. The NDC is the opposite. So in other words, the NDC looks for opportunity. What can we do to justify or to get us votes? It is not to solve a problem necessarily. So they go and hunt for things, low-hanging fruits that will get them votes. That is not how you develop a country. And I'll give you an example. And he himself happened, myself, the two of us, happened to come from Volta region. The thing they did in Ho, to build an airport in Ho, is one such thing to, placate and to, kind of lure the people to vote for them, because they have got to put an airport there. There was no economic frame within which that airport fit in the Volta region. It doesn't. The roads that lead to that airport, from Ho to that airport, and the road that leads from Aflao to that airport, and from all other places to that airport, are bad. Those roads deserve construction. If the NDC was focusing on policy, the outcome of policy justifying why they should be voted for, they would have constructed those roads rather than putting that white elephant they call an airport there. Number two, Salom, why the NDC is different from the NPP is that the NDC shies away from making critical, difficult policy decisions in this country when they're in government. The MPP engages what consequentially will transform this country. And oftentimes, and this critical issue we are dealing with is example of those moments, transformative moments in history that a political party comes to and say, look, we think that this is the way forward. It's a difficult one, will cost us electorally, but we'll do it. You saw that. The banking sector mess that happened. It happened under the NDC. And somehow they created a false impression for the people who operate in that space that big brother government will always be there to give you liquidity support. So they kept throwing money at the problem. The problem of the banking sector was not merely a problem of money. It was a problem of structure. It was a problem of conduct. It was a problem of people abusing the rules and regulation deficits. But then the NDC, instead of dealing with the difficult issue of reforming and rebuilding the banking sector, they rather threw money at it. The MPP, on the other hand, came and said, look, if we must build a banking sector to last, a banking sector that gives us the foundation to develop this country, then you must do a restructure. A difficult decision the MPP took. The third thing, there's the difference between the NDC and NPP is that the NDC has a high propensity to depend on aid. The NDC has a high propensity to depend on aid. The MPP, on the other hand, has a high propensity to depend on self-owned government.
Richard, it is appearing to me as if you've set your own question, and so your own question is what's the difference between NDC and MPP, and you've done an agama lizard, and you are answering that because that's what you want.
If you wait 1 second, no, that's what Ebiji did. If I tell you, if you take your studio now and you draw a map of everything Ebiji talked about, it was all over the place. He didn't answer a particular question.
Yeah, but you have set a specific question about what's the difference between NDC and MPP, and you are going at it. So I'll give you a minute to conclude on this.
Okay, so
just conclude on this. Just conclude on your own question.
No, no. That's not my question, Salam. So you see, so I am linking what the issue I've just outlined for you to what Eduji just said. Eduji talked about the DSSI, why we didn't participate, high propensity to for external aid and support, right? Eduji talks about the conversation that led to us eventually going to the IMF. Why we said we didn't want to go to the IMF. It was not because we thought going to IMF necessarily was a bad thing, but we decided that if we can fix our own problem, let's investigate and explore the options we have to solve our problem. So the difference I was trying to illustrate for you is clear to the extent that MPP, when we said that we didn't want to go to IMF, the reason is that we felt that true to our form, that let's find our own domestic solution to deal with the problem. As you know, the option that we were exploring didn't materialize because of the tense political environment that happened in our country. So really, there's a critical difference, and that is really what.
And that tense political environment, that tense political environment was also partly due to your lack of dialogue and consultation with the relevant stakeholders in that space. That's if you're talking about e-levy.
Yeah, no, certainly. I think I can grant you that to the extent that you can never finish consultation. You can never finish consultation because it's an endless exercise. You may assume you have consulted everyone, but there are people you have not consulted, and even in that consultation process, it is not. You cannot please everybody. So even after you have finished consultation, there are people you have consulted who are not satisfied with the way you are moving forward. So it's an endless process. So that you can only do so much. And the thing is that the motive, the rationale must be what you consider. What is the end game? What are we trying to do? Is it against the state? Is it for the state? What is the long-term benefit? So, for example, they said this thing about the debt restructure, and former President John Dramani Mahama at the Chatham House speech, he said that he agrees with debt restructure, but except that no consultation and the rest around it. And I'm saying that to the extent that you need to consult, you can never finish consulting. And in fact, you saw that the ministry kept consulting, and as you alluded to, the initial offer they brought have been reconsidered over time, and now where we are, considerably a good place. And if we'll get a chance to discuss the terms and for the categories of bondholders that have been arrived at in the final memorandum, you'll get to see that it has evolved over time. That's evidence of consultation. So it is for us to focus on the real issue. Sometimes the little things that happen along the way, if we then become fixated on those, as opposed to trailing the actual destination where we're going and how we're getting there, we lose the conversation, and then we now become focusing on the things that are incidental to where we are going.
Very well,
that's
Richard.
what Eduji did.
Very well, Richard. So, looking at the portfolio size of these pensioner bondholders, is it so important to be bent on including them in the process that we cannot openly come and say, okay, pensioner bondholders, you are exempted, you are off it, we are not dealing with you anymore in this DDEP? Why should we leave it open and say they can decide to join or not? That is what is creating a problem. If what we hear is correct, it's just about 2 billion out of the whole 137 billion you want to exchange.
Yeah.
Why can't we just, hive that off and focus on the 135 billion and make progress? Because the group we are talking about, they are the aged. They depend on this to buy drugs. We don't even know how long they will live, and they've saved. I mean, it doesn't look good, does it?
No, certainly. I understand. The whole debt restructure thing is not a fun thing for anyone. And that's what I was saying earlier, that it's not a fun thing for the finance minister. I have been close in some of the conversation, and you see his demeanor. And sometimes people think that he puts on his demeanor. The man is that person who, in the heat of things, maintains a certain outlook. But you can see the burden on him in trying to do this. Look, you can swap any number of people. You can take Eduji and make him finance minister tomorrow. He will not cancel the debt restructure. he will not exempt the people he is calling for to be exempted today. If we make you sell the finance minister,
you don't know that. I may have my own ideas. I may have my own ideas. Richard, you don't know that. All right, so let's conclude for me.
But let me just tell you. So the point is that you are going to be faced with reality. The same way right now, in the midst of this program, you cannot say to hell with all of us. So you want to call all of us off the program. You must shepherd this program to a point, even if you don't want me on the show again, at least you must tolerate, because of what you have promised your viewers, you must go through with the program and say, next time don't bring Rich. That will be your decision, right? So you are in a situation where you have the country to save or to lose if you don't do certain things. So the difficulty of it, I think we have to have a moment to soberly reflect on why is it that the finance minister cannot exclude people. Is it because he doesn't like them? Or is it because he has to achieve a certain outcome, which we know that we have to achieve a restructure of at least 80%. From what I'm understanding, we've got about 70% or so concluded. Why can he not exclude people? Because if he excludes people, we cannot achieve the object for which we'll save the economy. So if you are faced with that decision, so what would you do? In this country, just recently, in 2020, we were faced with the same choice, where our people would die from COVID or we make some necessary investment to save lives. If you are faced with that, I'm sure this one day you can make a decision for me to say. If you are substituted, if you were made the president, hold on. If you were made the president in 2020, if you were the president in 2020, what decisions will you make in respect of saving people's lives and their properties? What decision? Clearly, you are in a situation where your options are binary. You have to do one or the other. There is no middle ground. Because if your choice is between saving the economy or collapsing the economy because you cannot achieve a debt restructure domestically to be able to go external and get a deal done with the IMF, what will you do? So it's not decided that I want to include people because I don't like the look of their face, but it is because if you don't do it, we risk the whole thing. That must be the emphasis of this conversation.
Very well.
That must be the emphasis.
Yeah, I think I've been very nice to you. You've spoken for over 20 minutes, which is quite good. So that's fine. All right. So let me speak to Franklin. Franklin is a civil society person. He's been following these things, and he's also part of the Bondholders Forum. They've been doing a lot of that. Franklin, does the participation of the former CJ mean anything to the struggle at all? Does it give it impetus? And where are we even in this? Because we're wrapping it all up. I don't know if the participation of the CJ in the thing yesterday gives it a new life, for which reason the system or the powers that be must have to sit and relook at a few things. I don't know where we are actually. But does it give the struggle any impetus at all?
Well, good morning to my good friends, and good to see you, Richard. Well, guys, I mean, Salam, I like the word you use, struggle, and I think it connotes the difficulty people are having with understanding that a part of their funding of funds, investments would have to be pathed in order to achieve a debt restructuring program that obviously from all indications looks quite unbalanced in terms of the burden sharing that the government had wanted everybody to be part of. So I can understand the word you use, struggle, but let me just say that I think the former CJ was categorical that, look, she's fairly comfortable, and that in fact, she suggested that her investments may not even be impacted because she retires on, if you like, comfortable salary or whatever. I think many people miss that. So the big deal for the bondholders or those people you said are struggling with this whole debt restructuring thing is that this is someone who is sympathizing with the cause. And from her position, that is a big deal, really. I mean, I've seen some international wires basically picking the issue up I mean, to have a former Chief Justice basically coming out clearly and speaking in those terms should be seen as rather sympathizing with the cause rather than she being impacted directly. You understand? So that's the way I see her role, her participation in this whole exercise. But I think something also ought to be said about the reasons why the CJ would have done that. And she also mentioned that without consultations, without properly giving me the opportunity to understand what we are also bringing to the table as a government in this burden sharing arrangement, you cannot unilaterally vary the terms that we have agreed upon. I also understand the argument being made by my good friends Alfred and Richard, and indeed the significant members of the MPP, that look, we are in crisis, and that people ought to be supportive of an arrangement like this in order not to further dig ourselves into a hole. But the critical question which still stands, and I think we need to answer that question: what has our good friends at the ministry and indeed the government brought to the table as saying that this is also our part of this burden share arrangement? As we speak, I don't see anything significant at all. In fact, don't forget that as bondholders, we were tasked by the ministry to come up with ideas in order to fiscally readjust, and that work had been done quite professionally, done well, and we had cause to discuss. Since that work was done and submitted, I haven't heard any. You see, you're laughing. You got me laughing as well. Even Richard is laughing. So I haven't heard any. Maybe the minister is under so much pressure, but I think he has a lot of experts who can guide this conversation. I've not heard a single word of commitment that, if I take a critical look at this, whatever I tax these bondholders to come up with, I think the issue around reordering, if you like, restructuring MDAs and the government machinery, which could save me 6 billion Ghana cedis, we can begin from there. You know, I've not heard anything to that effect. So there's still a bit of difficulty in understanding why people ought to be, in fact, and indeed the pensioner bondholders have made a very good statement. I mean, they've made a good case of themselves, and the optics are quite, unfortunately, should I call it, disturbing, because these are aged people who they are not painting the picture, but the picture being painted out there is that the government is trying to muzzle them out of their investments, even though they are frail and they may not necessarily probably live the next 10, 15 years in order to see the fruition of this restructuring that the government wants them to be part of. So all I can say is that I think the CJ's action was quite timely. Maybe people will say it could have come much earlier, but it was also timely. And I bet you there are many people like that, very senior people who have served in government, not necessarily politicians, who have spoken to some of us. I mean, I've had calls from very, very senior people who also feel very worried that if they came out to probably speak and support this cause, they may be targeted. You know how political terrain really is. Whether it's justified or not, it happens daily as well. So I can only say that this is something the government itself must wake up to, and as many people have started either fairly or unfairly targeting the former CJ, it means that she's made significant impact in that regard.
Yes, let me take you up on this. Many people have said that if the middle class of our country were to be this active, the country wouldn't be where it is. Now we see the activity of the individual bondholders, because, I mean, a lot of them arguably fall within the middle class bracket. Now their interests are being attacked, quote unquote, or being affected. So now we see them speaking the way they are doing. When the country was borrowing, people were complaining. If we saw such an action from the middle class of the country, including the CJ and all of that, I don't know if she can qualify to be middle class, but largely yes. If we saw such actions, picketing of these significant people, socially significant people at the finance ministry making their voices heard, etc., you don't think we could have saved ourselves the difficulty we are in? So the docility of the middle class generally, many have said, is to be blamed for where we are. Do you agree to that?
Well, overwhelmingly, yes. You know, I have had my pet subject on this matter, pet discussions on this matter with my colleagues. I mean, sometimes we jokingly say that people tell us go out there and shout at governments and what have you, but in their close circuited quarters, they tend to even look down some of the advocacy work that we do. I mean, making comments like they don't even know what they are about. They are not. They talk from A to Z, say everything from archaeology to zoology. We've heard all those demeaning commentary. And so I'm not surprised this is coming up at this juncture. And so overwhelmingly, I agree with that view that the middle class largely had sat on the bench and had not come to the party until they were directly affected. And I see it through clearly. I must also